Hello everyone, Mike with Spray Jones, and we're going over best practices for spray foam in your basement. And I'm going to start with a section of unframed. You have not framed the basement yet. So yes, it can be totally sprayed, and this is actually the way that I prefer to spray basements if we have a choice in the matter. Here's how we go about doing it. You lay down a base plate ahead of time, and you lay the back of the plate a good inch further away from the wall than the depth of the spray foam that you intend to have installed. This application that you're looking at here is a 2-inch application. The base plate, the back of it, is going to be installed 3 inches. The advantage to this system is that you can get the full value of spray foam all the way up into the floor joist areas. That this rim joist is not going to be blocked by a framing plate. That you can see all the way into the joist ends, and that you can get a visual reference that your foam has been placed exactly where you want it to be, and not you're trying to inject it or build up foam into a blind corner. And so that's a very valuable way to go. This just shows, I'll go back here. This just shows how he has started at the top, worked his way down. He's going to build up the 2 inches of foam. In his left hand here is a probe. He's going to probe as he goes along and get an average. On a 2-inch application, you're going to be anywhere from 1 3/4 inch to 2 1/4 inch. And then after we're done, the framing is going to be installed. Something I do like to showcase here is windows, because windows need to be detailed out in order to bring the spray foam. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, note this window. The wood that is inset into the concrete is called the buck, and if the buck is not extended deeper than the depth of whatever foam you're going to be putting on, then you've got an infinity edge that the spray foam needs to be built up to. So here's the same detail sprayed. What we would do is we would build a board, use a board that's releasable, place it at the edge, spray the foam up to it, snap the board free, and then trim the foam. It's going to be a little ragged, a little disrupted, but you'll be able to finish off the window well after when you're framing. So on a or unframed job, the base plate's going to be laid down like this one is. These are steel channels to brace the walls. The spray foam is built up to the full thickness, shaved off where it may or may not extend out. Then framing is going to be installed, and then the electrical, and they're going to finish off the basement. The only thing that needs to be accomplished is any penetrations to the outside need to be installed ahead of time. Here's a better example of windows that have had the extension, a box extension placed in ahead of time. This one is actually framed, but you get the idea that some sort of hard fixed termination point is installed ahead of time that the spray foam can be built to and get it sealed. And there's the after picture. Before, after. The advantage to going unframed is, okay, the rough ends are done. Here's the furnace. Here's the plumbing. All penetrations through the joists have been accomplished. The spray foam is now installed. The bathrooms, nothing has been built yet. None of the interior framing is in the way. Now they're going to stand the walls up. The advantage to this system is that you have the full value of the foam, as I'd mentioned before, but also that this is now a warm basement and they can take their time. So scheduling of trades, if you don't know what you want to do and how you want to do it, the entire envelope is now sealed. Your penetrations to the outside are sealed, and now you can stand your walls up, do your electrical, finish off your interior space, take 2, 3, 4 months, 2 years to do it, all the while you have a warm basement. We do this on a lot of new construction. This is actually this was a show home for the builder, and he wasn't sure what his timing was going to be like to get in and do the basement, so we ended up spray foaming it, getting the foam thickness built the way that he wanted it. Here's his little heater down here warming things up. Now he's going to stand the walls up and finish. Here's another live shot of my guy spraying. This basement over here is framed and they're ready to go. Over here not. So it's a sort of a combination hybrid. But what he's done is he's detailed out the bottom. He's already sealed everything up at the top, and now he's going to build up the 2 inches of foam and check the depth and make sure that everything is well sealed. That is why I like this. Nothing is in our way. We can see that we've got the right amount of foam. There's no stress upon the builder or the homeowner to have certain things achieved or out of the way. We're just able to come in, get everything sprayed, and then once it's up to full value, they come in and finish. But you need to know that you're doing this and plan for it so that your framing is offset, or your base plate is going to be offset the proper amount. And all the while everything's warm, everything's dry, and the basement is now fully functional for the trades to come in and work. So it's a really, really good way to proceed, but you have to have a good spray foam installer to do it. Otherwise the foam is going to be far too thick, it's going to be too lumpy, too bumpy, and it's going to interfere when they go to stand the framing up. That's the risk that you have. But as you can see, we can lay the foam on quite smooth here to the value that is needed. And in those situations, the framing is offset, the base plate is offset enough that when they go to stand the walls up, they're not going to have an issue. So I think the unframed basement is the superior way to go when you're actually wanting to get the thing sprayed. So let's move on to the next section. Moving right along into framed, most basements, I would say probably 2/3 of the basements are framed compared to 1/3 unframed. And unframed, it isn't always new construction, but because people will rip stuff down and then not frame it. But in new construction where they know what the layout is and they've got a plan, they're usually going to get things framed up. So in this situation, 16 on center, the framing has been offset, I think in this case, 2 inches away. And I'll tell you why. The builder is keeping their options open. If the client decides to bat it, they've got the 5.5 or 6 inches of depth for batting. But they're not, if they're going to go foam, they're not going to move the framing around. So in most situations, if you know you're going spray foam, you're going to put in 2x4 framing. I would prefer to see 24 on center spacing. You're going to set your framing off the concrete 1 inch. And the reason is you might as well maximize the space. You want spray foam behind it, and you get a neater, cleaner job. You see all these lines here, okay? That's where the foam is just barely kissing up to the back of the studs, right? And visually, I find it very distracting. The electrical has been roughed in ahead of time. Penetrations through the joist. Let's go to this section. Okay, here the furnace is away from the wall. HRV, heat recovery ventilator, away from the wall. And there's enough space here that we can get. This is very critical that your furnace, water heater, your mechanical equipment, the rough ends, that the actual mechanical equipment is not too close to the outside walls where we cannot build the full value in. So again, electrical plugs have been placed in, but you can see what I'm talking about here. It's hard to keep an even and neat, consistent job when the framing is constantly hovering just in front of where you have to build your spray foam to. Now, if you go and set the framing 1 inch away, which this job is, you can tell how much the foam is coming up on the framing. You get a cleaner, neater job. The visual on the side of the stud is better because the 2 inches of foam is going to come past and up the side of the studs, and you're not going to get this wavy line along the sides where the foam is just barely starting to kiss up to the back of the stud. I think this is a neater, cleaner job. Again, the electrical has been roughed in, even though there are no electrical plugs on this outside wall. That's how I like the jobs to look. You know, they say with food you eat with your eyes. Well, I find that with spray foam, you judge the quality of the job by how it looks too. If the foam is smooth, even and consistent, the stud face is clean, and they've done a good job, people are more likely to say, well done. Here's an example of where the mechanical equipment is starting to get too close. All right, so if this is what you're going to be faced with spray foam, this is a problem. because you're not going to adequately be able to get at each side with the ductwork in the way. So either rigid insulation is going to have to be placed behind and then tied in with spray foam, or this is going to have to be disassembled. Most people aren't going to disassemble it. So the way that we tackle this is we get rigid styrofoam, 1.5, 2 inches. We get the client to cut this in, glue the pieces in, make the pieces larger than the width of the obstruction, and then we tie them in top and bottom to get them sealed. And it's a pretty good method. Again, here's some rough-ins. Plumbing has been installed ahead of time. The walls have been floated, and it's ready for spray foam. Here's another angle of a new construction. In this situation, this wall where the electrical is, they mount this panel on a piece of rigid. So they take 2 pieces of styrofoam and they ram set with a Hilti gun or a nail gun. They ram the board and sandwich the rigid to it, and they make the board generously larger than the electrical panel. And as a result, we just bring the spray foam up to that board on all 4 sides, and they've got a controlled amount of foam behind it and then the spray foam up beside it. And then they can bring in and tie in all these tails and get everything sealed up the way it's supposed to be. Very good way to go. Here's a close-up view of that electrical panel. The rigid insulation is behind here. The board is the electrical panel, 200 amp panels mounted on it, and then the spray foam is brought up to it and tied in. Here's an example of where we've gotten out and spray foam. The reason the spray foam is gray is because the sunlight has changed the color, but this person knew that they were going to have a very large oversized board going in ahead of time, so we came out, spray foamed the area ahead of time, and then they mounted the board, and then we tied the spray foam into it. And you can see just how tight it is. People ask us a lot of times on a board like this, well, can you get in behind there? The answer is no. I mean, on a 2-foot or a 30-inch board, you can't. You're not going to get into the middle, and you're not going to get the foam even and consistent. You can see just how much depth you've got to work with here. So spray it out ahead of time or mount rigid in behind it. Okay, so here's an example of a newer home, but the basement's never been finished. It's been framed. We had everything detailed out ahead of time. So what I mean by that is that we had them bag the water heater, clean everything up, and you do the best that you can with the penetrations that are through. Sometimes there's areas that are very, very tight, and you have to get things opened up, things moved, ducts dropped, equipment taken out of the corner. But in this situation, the electrical's all been roughed in. They've taped the stud face to keep the wood clean. This framing, it's hard to see, but it's actually set off about 1.25 inches. It doesn't look it, but it is. So he knows that he's going to be able to build the full value of the 2 inches of spray foam, and he's going to be at proper thickness, and it's going to look okay. It looks like he's spraying it on a little thick, but he's not. I happen to know because I came out to this job and took a look at it. We kick a board around or a piece of cardboard at the bottom just to get the initial overspray taken care of. Somebody else had been in there and detailed out the joists for the builder when the house was built. We didn't do that, so we're just tying into the work that's already existing. This guy proceeds to start in the middle and work his way up and tie into that existing foam and fireproofing that was placed up there. I'm fine with that, and he's working his way down. When the guys are good, they know the depth of the foam just by looking at it, and the probe is just sort of a secondary thing. Usually shut down the furnaces, just turn them off so they're not sucking the spray and the mist and what have you in. But we can get around and detail a lot of this type of stuff out fairly easily. But again, new construction, framed. Spray foam is been placed in this situation ahead of time. The framing is been placed in post foam, and then we're coming back to detail out some of the tighter sections that they couldn't do at the time, namely the electrical panel. The electrical panel had not been properly detailed out at the time when we were there, so we came back and the electrician had disconnected, and we were able to get the spray foam in behind. But again, framing, they've marked everything out on the walls as to where they want things to go. and then they're going to start doing their finals. When you've got the spray foam already installed for the joists and the walls, if they chip it up a bit, it can just be fixed up with can foam. It's actually better to have your full value of spray and be able to work with it and cut into it than it is to have nothing and then you're trying to get something when you've had zero zilch and you're not sure if the foam gets in at all. And there's one last time what pre-framed, pre-electrical. This is 16 on center. Again, I prefer 24. They've detailed out the windows for us ahead of time, gone in and sprayed. The framing is deeper, much deeper than what the foam is going to need to be, so the foam just barely kisses up to the back. The electrical's all been roughed in. We've kept the floor clean. All the penetrations are already through to the floor joist areas, and you're good to go. So I would prefer, again, framed 1 inch offset. Put your wiring and your electrical in. Do your rough-ins through the penetrations to the outside. Deal with the areas of electrical panel and water heater and tight details ahead of time, and get your spray foam built in. If you do all of these things, you're going to have a very good job, very warm basement, and as long as the installers keep things clean and you get the full value of what you've agreed upon, you're going to have a good, long, dry basement for the rest of the life of the structure, multi-generational. So I hope this has been of a help to somebody. Click, share, like, and subscribe, comment on the video, and we'll catch you on the next one.